What up, YouTube? It's your boy Ola coming with a new video here. It's been a little while since I made the first video for the channel. It's going to be the new video right here. And we're going to be talking about the divisional games, which, whew, man, it's a lot of action that went on this weekend and a lot of highs, a lot of lows. There's a lot of different things looking like it was going different directions. This is going to be part one. I'm going to do two videos. This first one is going to be highlighting the San Francisco and Minnesota game, and then the primetime game with Baltimore and Tennessee. And then I'll do a part two with highlighting the Sunday's games. So let's jump right into it. First of all, wrote down some stats here just to try to do some comparison between the teams. Um, so we're going to start off with the San Fran and Minnesota game. Even though the score for that game was 27-10, it was actually a pretty good, pretty competitive game. Um, the score, they say numbers don't lie, but sometimes numbers do lie. That score, it was a little bit of a lie because it was a little bit more competitive than what the score is saying, but obviously San Fran was a little bit too much for Minnesota. And then the hypeness of the crowd, obviously, momentum with the crowd being into it. Minnesota looks like they were falling under the pressure. Although the first two quarters, it was pretty close because it was end of first quarter was 7-7, so pretty tight game. They both were, both playing pretty decent defense, and both working on the running game. By the end of the first half, the score was 14-10, so it looked like it was going to be a close game, just from that. But San Fran just ran away with it. They utilized a lot of the passing game, and when they would actually do the completions, they were getting a lot of high yardage. With guys like Bourne, just getting a lot of yards on the receiving end, and it seemed like after a while, like Minnesota just couldn't stop it. They couldn't keep up with the receivers. They couldn't stop the running game after a while. I'm not sure if they were just getting exhausted, but it looked like it was a lot closer game. And if you look at the numbers comparing the two quarterbacks, right? Check this out. This is how you can tell that numbers also lie here. Um, Kirk Cousins for Minnesota, 21 out of 29, 72% completion, 172 yards, one touchdown, only one interception. Then if you compare that to Garoppolo, Garoppolo had, let's see, it was 11 for 19. So um, he was, about 52% or something like that on completion, 131 yards, one touchdown, one interception on the passing end. So if you compare just their passing, just the passing of the quarterback, you would have thought that Kirk Cousins would have won because for one, he threw a lot more. He completed at a higher percentage. He also had a lot more passing yards, and they both had equal on the touchdown interceptions for the passing end on that. So with just those numbers, you would have thought Minnesota won if you didn't look at the final score. But I think what made the difference was a couple of things. First of all, Minnesota was only able to sack Garoppolo twice versus San Fran was able to get Kirk Cousins down six times. Six sacks is a lot, and especially in a postseason game. Anything beyond two or three is already jeopardy. So six is like not putting yourself in good positioning. And then you got two of them that came from Bosa. I think that was a big difference factor. I think the other thing was that it just seemed like Garoppolo had more firepower on the receiving end because he was able to give the ball to four different receivers throughout the game. Most of them were born, but he was able to utilize more people. And the other main thing was when the game was, I believe it was 17-10 after San Fran hit the field goal. Later on, Minnesota gets the ball, and the interception that was thrown by Minnesota was caught by Richard Sherman. And had Richard Sherman not did that interception, that potentially would have got the Minnesota closer to the red zone, and they would have been able to, potentially tie the game. When that happened, it almost looked like Minnesota was deflated at that point. And this was already in I believe that was somewhere within the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken. So it's already getting closer to the end of the game. You have that situation happen. You have sacks coming through a little bit too much over the top. So I think the sacks and that Richard Sherman interception were a big difference maker, because once he did that, there was after that Minnesota, barely did anything after that in the third and the fourth, and they didn't even score in the third or the fourth. So I think that might have took the just took the whole opportunity for momentum out the window. Game two, which was primetime game. Um, so I was actually more hyped and excited to want to see the Baltimore game, but after seeing that game, I think the San Francisco game was obviously a lot better, because even though Minnesota obviously didn't look like they had a chance in the first half or so, they presented at least a decent threat, and it was competitive going back and forth on the rush and the passing. But this Baltimore game was a complete disaster. It wasn't exciting, to say the least. I'm like 100% anti-Ravens fan, but I do like what Lamar Jackson has done this year. For his quarterback to do 3,000 pass and 1,000 rush yards in the same season. Um, and I really wanted the opportunity for him to present himself in the postseason. And I'm gonna tell you what. Before we get to the stats, I'm gonna tell you what I think was a big mistake. If I'm not mistaken, on the last week, week 17 for Baltimore, they sat down Lamar Jackson in that game. And if you count that moment from that time up until the game that they played against the Titans, he basically had 3 weeks off without having to compete. And the Titans were just, coming off of, a big win. Um, they were able to upset, the Pats. So you're taking out the number 3 seed. You're feeling pretty confident. You're facing the number 1 seed, so you're feeling good about yourself. You know what I'm saying? Tennessee was already getting momentum, while Baltimore was just rusting off for 3 weeks. And so here come the stat lines. So we've got Tannehill 7 of 14, 50%, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions, which I'm not even sure if this is the same Tannehill, because it's weird. Most people were like, wasn't this the same guy that played for Miami? And it just seems weird that he just played such a solid game. He even, caught a ball from Henry to go in for a touchdown, which that was pretty odd too. I'm not sure if that was part of the plan, but that worked out pretty well. And without having any interceptions, which when he was in Miami, Jesus, he was terrible. I don't know if it was the system. I don't know if it's just just not enough wide receivers. I don't know if it's just the coaching, but he didn't fit that system. Whether the Tennessee Titans go to win it all or not, this guy made a huge impact this regular season and postseason to do this with his team. Um, Baltimore just was a complete meltdown. First of all, with Lamar Jackson, the numbers do not tell the truth, because the numbers look outstandingly better um, compared to Tannehill in some ways. But here's where it all falls down. So you've got Lamar Jackson. They lost 28-12, but his passing numbers are 31 of 59, and Tannehill was 7 of 14. And in many cases, a quarterback doing 7 of 14 is very minimal to get it done in a regular season game in the current NFL, with the way the passing volume is like way higher than maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago. So with a 7 of 14, you would have thought, just with those numbers, you would have thought Tannehill lost. And with Lamar Jackson having 31 of 59, a 53% completion, you would have thought for sure he had the victory. And if you compare their yards on the passing, Tannehill has only 88 yards, as I stated before, versus 365 passing yards for Lamar Jackson. I mean, if a guy has 365 passing yards with 31 out of 59 compared to 88 yards of 7 of 14, and we just put money on just those statistics, no one's going to pick that the Tennessee Titans would ever win this in a regular season, let alone a postseason, let alone against the home team, let alone against the number one team in that conference. So that's where it's mind blowing. And then Tannehill, as I stated, had 2 touchdowns. Lamar had one. Tannehill had 0 interceptions. Lamar had 2. So those 2 interceptions really hurt. Um, and then if you look at what else Lamar Jackson did, not just on the passing, the rushing, he did 20 carries, 143 yards of rushing to go on top of the 365 of passing. So and he averaged 7.2 yards per carry, which is more. He did more on the rushing than what any of his running backs did on the rushing. Um, Ingram on the rush did 6 carries versus Lamar Jackson's 20, and Ingram only did 22 yards total versus Lamar's 143, and Ingram's 3.7 per carry versus Lamar's 7.2. And Edwards did only 3 carries, 20 yards total, 6.7 per carry. So if you just look at paperwork, it legit looks like Lamar Jackson, number one, won this game, and number two, it looks like he did all the work himself. But if you really watched the game, you saw he was doing too much juking and jiving. He was getting caught a lot. The sacks, it was ridiculous. Like he was just getting sacked. It just seemed like a lot more than he normally does. And I feel like he wasn't taking off and just running straight through. It just seemed like he was wasting time. There was certain moments where they needed to rush the clock to try to get a score really quick. There was a lot of like poor time management. Um, Even though his rushing numbers look good, he didn't do it efficiently to help him make a difference to convert it to points. Even though his passing looked phenomenal on paper, it didn't convert enough to points. You would have thought with these numbers, Baltimore easily won like 35-7, and that's not the case. Tennessee, Henry, 30 carries, 195 yards, 6.5 yards per carry. The defense for Baltimore just could not stop that man. Too big, too strong, and too fast. Like his speed is ridiculous. Like I don't know how he could run that fast, being that big. Um, the defense for Baltimore absolutely atrocious, which you know that usually Baltimore is known for having great defense, even though Ray Lewis and Reed and those guys aren't there anymore. But just their culture is good, is usually known for a lot of points, making sure the defense is always their defense is usually better than their offense. But in this case, defense very suspect, needs a lot of improvement. Their offense, obviously, can go toe to toe with the best of them. Didn't do it that night though, but normally they do. And it looks like also the difference maker was that Tennessee Titans had 4 sacks. That's not going to get it done. And to have the quarterback doing more yards on rushing and just doing all that, and it still only equated to 12 points. That was completely atrocious. Um, like I said, to be honest, I was hoping that the Ravens will win, not because, like I said, I'm not a Ravens fan. I'm a Lamar Jackson fan, just from what he's done this season and the enormous improvement from what he did last year to this year is astronomical. No one has really done these kind of numbers from one season to the next exponentially, and to do, like I said, uh, new records in one season is just quite impressive. But this is almost gonna um, it's almost gonna make this current season feel like it's forgettable just because of the fact of just a huge meltdown. And the Baltimore fans just weren't even dedicated to the game. As soon as they saw, you know, the turnovers, it seemed like even though the Baltimore fans were still in the stadium and didn't go home early, they just seemed so deflated that they gave up on both Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. And I think that also can attest to maybe why the game didn't turn around like the way it did for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's going to be a separate video, but just to end with that, the Chiefs, to me, the meltdown before they started scoring, that meltdown was worse than Baltimore because they got down 24 zip in like the first half before they did anything. But yet the fans stuck through, cheered them on, and then that kind of like just having that backup from your home crowd, and also having Mahomes going in there and kind of like just going off on the team helped to remotivate and respark that. Versus Lamar Jackson, it just looked like he was upset. He was frustrated every time they showed the camera on him. He didn't look like he was fascinated with the game. He didn't look like he wanted to be there anymore. The rest of the team wasn't sparked up. He wasn't out there trying to motivate them. So a lot of that also plays into a role, man. So that's my analysis on these first two games. I thought the primetime game was going to be better, but it was actually a lot more disappointing. And the early afternoon game with Minnesota and San Francisco was definitely a lot more competitive, definitely a lot better, and a lot more exciting. So keep watching these videos. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you can always get notifications. And I'll continue doing these videos. Like I said, right now it's sports related, but it's going to be more videos for different things coming up. And look out for the part 2 of this video. I'll definitely make sure to put the link of part 2 in the description below. So make sure to look out for that and tune in to all future videos. And if you have any suggestions, if you have any comments, leave the comments. I'll be sure to respond back. If you have any suggestions for future videos or any ideas, go ahead and shoot me that too, so we can go ahead and keep growing this channel and keep it moving forward. Thank you for watching my part 1 video. It's your boy Ola on Ola TV. Have a great rest of your day.